loud, and you may have to click on something. Did that work?
Yep.
Very good. All right, John, take it away. The floor is yours.
All righty. So I guess we'll start with this slide right here. So I have a patent on the use of this formula in hardware and software. And this formula allows you to compare the efficiency of one house to another. And so I developed this in the late 90s. And basically what it does is you have the heat loss of the house, which kind of stays consistent. And then indoor temperature minus outdoor temperature, times BTUs per hour. So once like if the indoor temperature is set for 70 and the outdoor temperature is 10, that has 60. So it's the heat loss, and there's a delta T of 60. And if it warms up and it's 40 degrees, then the delta T would be 30. So that heat loss would be half as much, depending upon what the weather is. The other side of the equation is heating degree days, and then the amount of BTUs in the fuel that you're using. It could be oil, could be electricity over here, and then percent efficiency. So if you're doing things like heat pumps and solar, you could go over 100% efficiency in this calculation. Usually for things like electricity, there's an offset because electricity is losing energy when it comes across the, let me see, I'll show you. They talk about an offset in here. So when they developed, this is a new European standard that was developed for energy efficiency. And this was developed probably about 10, 15 years ago. When they developed this standard, they compared all the different types of, heat pumps and boilers, all the different types of HVAC equipment that were out there, and they ranked them according to efficiencies from G to A++. And then they put them in different categories when they did that. So this comes from a 50-page summary that came from a bigger research paper. So that's where this came from. And there's a conversion factor of 2.5. So they're basically saying that, because electricity loses a lot of energy at the power plant and then over the lines, the power lines that they're building in. So in other words, if you're looking at something like this, an outside air source heat pump, if it's 80% efficient, you take that and times it by 2.5. Where's my calculator? Wait, there it is. So 2.5 times 0.8 equals 2. So that would have a, coefficient of performance of 2. So it'd be 200% efficient is how efficient that would be. And then up here, if you're over 120%, like the ground source heat pumps and best gas absorption heat pumps, then that'd be 2.5 times 1.2 is like 3. So that means that's better than a coefficient of performance of 3 up in the A++ category for electrical systems. So the boilers themselves, it's based off the fuel. So if it says 64%, it's, that means that the low temperature boiler is 64% efficient. So when using this formula, you probably, you may want to use a conversion factor that you can kind of add into the use of this formula for like electricity or something. So that's, I kind of want to show that. So my background, we'll start with, let me see. I'll bring up. So this is me. I started off as an apprentice plumber. And then after 22 years, I became the GOAT, greatest of all time at what I did. And a year after I won a design contest and I won best in show with the highest points total in the history of competition, PHC News, a guy from PHC News contacted me. His name was John Mason Brink. John Mason Brink contacted me and wanted to do an article on me after I won the contest. So I made the cover of the magazine. And this is the cover. This system won first place retrofit 1 year. That's not the winning system.
Very
This is
nice.
winning system here, over here on this side. And then this is snow melt in the courtyard. So in the case of John Ruhnke, owner of JR's Plumbing and Heating, Norwalk, Connecticut, attention to detail and craftsmanship sets this contractor apart from others. Don't believe me, just ask the RPA. When in 2005, Ruhnke received Best in Show honors at the Radiant Pan Association System Showcase Awards. According to the RPA, JR's Plumbing and Heating received the highest points total in its more than decade-long history of the competition, which features entries from across Canada and the USA. And the system won in the commercial category. So this project took first place in the commercial category also. And another project took first place retrofit in 2004. So I won 3 times in the contest. And then they even talked a little bit. Here's the formula again. We talked about the formula and my patent a little bit in that. So we'll get into, I go through the pictures first on here. So one thing I want to talk about. So what I'm doing now is, you know, the air to water heat pumps, but this is some of the work. This is a project that my company did. I did the design for my company installed, you know, with the controls and the piping. And so I can just show you the complexity of what I had done. And, you know, this is for Penny Glassmeyer. This is her house and snow melt in the courtyard. These 3 boilers were for snow melt. And this one was for the house itself. I probably wouldn't do snow melt today, but I saw the movie An Inconvenient Truth in 2006. And this job was already in the planning stages. So that's my defense for installing snow melt.
John, could you go back to the picture with the snow melt system and explain some of the components, like the big silver, go back one?
This one?
Yeah, what is that?
That's a low loss header. That creates isolation from the boiler system, which pipes directly into this on one side and between, you know, what's pumped out into the system out in the field, you know, out in the driveway, which I didn't take a picture of. So basically it isolates. So the water comes down into the piping down here, these two pipes, 2 big pipes from these 3 boilers, and then comes across here and goes into there. And basically it's like a decoupler. So the pumps from the boilers are circulating water in and out of this low loss header. And then this pump over here is pumping in and out of the snow melt system, or it pumps in and out of this heat exchanger on this side. And then this heat exchanger, there's snow melt that goes into on that side, that goes into the, you know, the manifolds in the snow melt system out in the driveway. And then this is a feeder that feeds antifreeze into the system. So this is all water on this side. And then this is antifreeze on this side. And this is just let me see. This is just an expansion tank. That's all this is. So basically, as the water gets hotter, it grows. And then there's a bladder in here. And it pushes against the bladder, so it compresses the air. Without it, you'd pop the relief valve because the water would grow. It needs a place to expand into. So that's what this tank is. It's just an expansion tank.
Thanks.
Yes. So this is what I want to talk about here. So the whole project, overall efficiency, the main focus of overall efficiency was to slow global warming down. The purpose of this is to create efficient houses, so we're using energy more wisely, and to slow global warming down to give the engineers and the scientists enough time to develop the technology. And so the goal that I have today is to build, so energy efficiency was a big part of my early career. My new career is building out the electrical infrastructure, especially on the hydronic side with heat pumps. So now it's more important to build out electrical infrastructure. And the reason is now I see a future of endless supply of sustainable energy that'll never, ever run out, that'll end up being cheaper than fossil fuels. And when that system is installed all over the world, then we will have a new industrial revolution, because we won't need to worry about sustainability. This is energy that is CO2 free. So, and a lot of it has to do with electric, though also I see hydrogen. So since the energy would be so abundant, hydrogen is not very efficient, or making hydrogen is not very efficient, but this energy is going to be so abundant and so cheap, the non-efficiency of the hydrogen is not going to really matter. We're just going to be able to stick a couple electrodes into water, make some hydrogen that can power airplanes. So things like airplanes, and hydrogen can also act as a battery. Currently, the lithium batteries out there, they require digging a lot of, I don't know if we can build up enough battery power supply to handle the world's supply. So between solar and wind, that's not base load power. It requires a lot of batteries. I don't know if there's enough, if we have enough, we're probably destroying the earth, digging the mines for the lithium and the nickel and that we need for the batteries. So I don't know if that's necessarily the best solution. We need good base load power. So I get into that. So there are two solutions. One is nuclear. Bill Gates has developed a new nuclear power plant technology. He first had this in China, but then Trump stopped that because he didn't want to give the Chinese our best technology. So the controls are way better than they used to be back in the 50s and the 60s. Most of the existing nuclear power plants that are in production today are around from the 50s and the 60s. So they're much more safer. They're cooled by liquid sodium, which allows passive cooling, so you don't need to pump the cooling around, so it can cool the nuclear core a lot safer than it used to be. So this, unlike water, the sodium doesn't need to be pumped because it gets hot, it rises, and as it rises, it cools off. So even if the plant loses power, the sodium just keeps absorbing heat without getting to a dangerous temperature that would cause a meltdown. So there's, I see big, huge power plants, nuclear power plants that can create so much electricity that we're producing hydrogen. And there's this not in my backyard syndrome that's going on. So I see these power plants can be located remotely and just pump out hydrogen, unbelievable amounts of hydrogen, which can be used for airplanes and shipping and other stuff, and just replace fossil fuels. So the next energy source I'm looking at is what they call deep well geothermal. 1 kilometer of the Earth's crust can heat all of mankind, can provide enough energy for all of mankind for 100,000 years. This is a source, clean baseload power that'll never, ever run out. Currently, this company called Evor is building a system in Germany that'll power 2 towns. And then they have 4 or 5 other systems on the drawing board. And so this is a closed loop system. the drill bit can turn and drill sideways, and then it brings up pretty hot water, you know, for power plants. There's another company.
How many feet do you have to go down typically?
I'm not quite, let me see.
Roughly, what's your gut feeling?
These guys are going down about 2.4 kilometers in depth.
Okay.
That's what they're going down. There's another company here that's going to drill the world's deepest hole. They're called Quasi Energy. They say that if you drill down between 10 kilometers and 20 kilometers, you can bring up supercritical steam anywhere in the world. So you can drill down anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter where. You drill down, you get down 10 kilometers deep or 20 kilometers deep, you can bring up supercritical steam, and that can power most power plants. So you can convert many power plants or supercritical steam over to the supercritical steam. So you could convert a coal power plant, natural gas, oil power plant, they can be converted over. So that's a nice thing about this. Again, you know, this is like 2 towns at a time, probably. But they have a drill bit. What they're saying is that as you get deep, like between 10 and 20 kilometers deep, they're saying that the cost goes up exponential. And so that's a reason why no one drills that deep. But this drill bit actually melts the rock. It's a laser, and it drills with a laser. So they do traditional, and it's based on breakthrough fusion research. So they do traditional drilling for maybe 3 or 4 kilometers, and then they get down further. They break it up with a laser. So they're saying the cost can go from exponential to linear. And so it can be affordable and make sense to drill these real deep holes. They're going to drill the world's deepest hole. And that's where they can bring up the supercritical steam. So EVOR is already, it's already been developed. It's already been installed. It's already being done. This system is a pilot. The pilot plant is being built. And if that goes well, then they can scale that up and build bigger plants. This right here, so say 500 degrees Celsius, if you can get down to 20 kilometers. This technology is not developed. So they still need to develop this drill bit. They haven't really dug any holes with this thing yet. It's still in development. So the problem with this technology just sounds great. And they can, you know, some places like Iceland, you don't need to drill as deep. So you can hit the supercritical steam maybe at 3 kilometers. Maybe you don't have to go 20 kilometers. So there's certain places with volcanic activity and such in the world that we can hit the temperatures we need without drilling so deep.
What's a typical dollar for, say, you know, digging? Anything for a kilometer or half a kilometer? Typically, you know, how much does it cost?
I don't really know. I mean,
Gut feeling.
well, I think they got like 15 or 20 million dollars right now to develop the drill bit a little bit further. I don't even think they got enough money to actually start drilling, if I remember right.
But the drill bit, that's already done by the oil companies, right?
No, this is a laser drill bit. This is a drill bit. So right. So the oil companies have drill bits that can do this. They can go down like 2 to 3 kilometers, and then they can turn sideways.
Exactly.
So when you got the Republicans, which are saying drill, baby, drill, I'm saying, yeah, you know, let's not drill for oil. Let's drill for these deep well geothermal systems. So we're going to keep them in business.
Right, right.
So the biggest problem that I think we have is that many environmentalists are kind of like, we got to stop oil. And you will kill more people if you just stop oil and stop fossil fuels, then you would be if you didn't. So you have to build out the electrical infrastructure first. We need this. It's like a damned if you do, damned if you don't. There's going to
Right.
be some black swan events which are coming. And
Correct.
so we get back to this
Now, just
presentation.
quickly on that drilling.
Yeah,
So the oil companies, do they do it mechanically or do they do it with laser?
they do it mechanically.
Reason they don't do it by laser is what?
Well, this was developed for fusion, for nuclear fusion.
Right.
This drill bit was developed to do something with nuclear fusion. That's where they developed the laser. And then they figured out that it can melt stone. And so when they figured out it did a really good job melting stone, they decided to take the laser and turn it into a drill bit.
I see.
So, you know,
So
that's how
that can be used for oil drilling too.
it could be, but you know, we're trying to get away. We don't need more oil drilling technology.
Right.
So here's the problem that we have. Okay, we're going to get back to this. So this is an important chart here. This is a Holocene. So humankind over 12,000 years, this is steady, even temperature. And then it gets, you know, to modern times, now have 8 billion people that are being fed worldwide. And we developed this civilization and this culture and the agriculture to do it. There's no way we can sustain 8 billion people without energy. So we need energy to sustain them. Very important. If you look at this chart right here, this spike is more than anything in the entire Holocene period. You have to go back to the Pleistocene period. Sorry if I'm not saying that right. So this is 100,000 years ago. This spike right here, to see the temperature changes and to see the CO2 rises, you got to go back 100,000 years. Okay.
Right.
And this looks like a heart attack. So these are extreme temperatures up and down. This is not the Holocene. This is dangerous. So we're going to see and then they're predicting by 2050, we're going to be here. And by 2100, we're going to be here. This is a disaster. We can't let this happen. This is a major disaster up here. So this spike is going to cause black swan events. Things like the Amazon rainforest, the climate will change, and all those species that took thousands and thousands of years for the animals, for the plants to develop, to create this. You can't move the rainforest from one area to another. That can't be done. It's just going to die off, and then it's not going to be replaced. And so the whole earth will be thrown out of balance. So, you know, there's a lot of this stuff I don't even like to think about what could happen. But, you know, I figure we got 30 or 40 years to build out the electrical infrastructure and get to net zero. And it's possible. And if we do, we can have a new industrial revolution. So it's something to look forward to. If we don't, this is going to like kill tons of people. It's not good. I don't even want to think about it. Okay. So this is how bad things are. So this is oil, this is gas, and this is coal. And of course, with the, you know, endless wars we got going on today, and, you know, the what's going on with Russia and the fact we blew up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, you know, everything that's going on, Germany is now back to producing coal because they have to. And so the sanctions on Russia and all this kind of stuff, you know, they're like 2-year-olds. These people are like 2-year-olds. They're playing around with this, and they're increasing the use of coal right now. You know, and if you look at this, the amount of dirty energy, you know, is higher than what we've managed to develop for clean energy, because, you know, nuclear, hydro, and renewables, that's this. This has to grow so far that these three shrink. These three have not started shrinking yet. So we're not anywhere close to our goals of building out this electrical infrastructure. So reality is not set in. the politicians need to listen to engineers and scientists more. They're not doing it. But they better get their act together or else we're going to have a disaster. That's all I can tell you. So these are some of the systems I designed myself, so you can see the work that I did. So I'm just on the distribution side. I'm not even on the engine side of the system or the power plant side. I'm just responsible for making the distribution side more energy efficient. That's what I'm doing. And building out the electrical infrastructure with heat pumps, like the air to water heat pumps to power these systems here. The average coefficient of this is above 3. And
when you say the average coefficient, you mean that's the coefficient of performance?
yeah. And
Okay.
if you look at this, the A++ category, we had ground source heat pumps up here. So outsource heat pumps 10 to 15 years ago in the A to B category. So what I wanted to show, there's a slide in here. Let's never find it. Here it is. This slide shows in Europe, Phoenix Hero Premium Series air to water heat pump is in the A++ category now. So now we have air to water heat pumps in the A++ category. So air source heat pumps are now able to do what geothermal used to do in the past. So that's huge. We're on our heat pump, we're seeing average efficiencies over 3. So, and that puts us into the A++ category. So that's what we're getting. So I'm proud to be selling this because this has an average seasonal efficiency COP over 3. It's a very good unit. So a lot of advancements have been made on the air.
Are you going to talk about price, the cost
Of what?
for these units?
No. I mean, I don't know. I suppose, this and the heat pump could be like $15,000. I guess we could mention that for this and this, and then, some pumps and other components added into it, like a kit. So a kit would be about $15,000. We also sell the air handlers. You could add that, manifolds. So, and then we sell these units here too.
Right.
The reason is I don't want to get into labor costs because labor costs vary so much.
Sure.
Unbelievable. Some people charge 25 an hour. Some people charge 500 an hour.
Right.
I mean, so that's why it's kind of dangerous to talk about. So, and then what I did, so I got a patent. This is my patent. I wrote this patent myself. I wrote a provisional patent application. And then within a year, I paid Blake, I guess that's his name. He's actually, is it Michael Blake, Doug? I think Michael Blake. Yeah, Michael
Sorry,
Blake.
I was on mute. Yes, it is Mike Blake.
He's one of our members.
He's a member of IACT and he lives in Milford. I think his bachelor's is in mechanical engineering. So
yes, and he's a patent attorney.
So he'd be the right person to go to for this.
Yeah, so he wrote this patent application. So he wrote the patent application. I wrote this for myself for free. I got this book called Patent It Yourself by David Pressman. I wrote the patent application myself. Then I hired Mike Blake. And then what you want him to do is the claims, because the most important part of the patent application is the claims. So you kind of want to include everything, including the kitchen sink if you write it yourself, because you never know what claim might be valuable. And if you don't include something that could be a claim in your patent, and then you lose the date or the timestamp. So in other words, when you file the provisional patent application, that's when the clock starts. So that's why you make it as broad as you possibly can. And then the lawyer can pick claims from your provisional patent application when he writes a regular patent application. So the regular patent application becomes based off the provisional. So that's how you can save money. And then once you have the provisional filed, you can go out and try and sell your invention. So this way, I think this project cost me a few $1,000s. I had this business plan written. So what was the name of that I think Doug, you were the one who turned me on to
Was it CT Next you're thinking of?
no, it freelancer.com.
Oh, yes, yeah.
So
I-
I went to freelancer.com and I put the business plan out to bid. And $600 is what it cost me to get this business plan written. And so this thing is a multitude of pages. How many pages is it? Yeah, so it's pretty extensive, like 43 pages. He did a pretty good job. So there's no way I could have done this. You know,
Did-
if I
What
tried
did
to
you-
do this,
What did you
like-
give them in
Huh?
terms of? So the output is the package they gave you, freelancers.com. What
yes,
did
so
you
you
give
put
them as input?
well, I kind of work with them. So I did provide them with written material, and then they make it kind of look all nice, and then also phone conversations.
I see.
This was before Zoom. So I think today would probably do a lot of Zoom meetings. So there were a lot of meetings involved. I was impressed with how much work got done for $600. And I never could have done it as good as this for that. You know, if you think about, you know, I go out and I earn a few $1,000s a week. So it's like $1,000 a day. So there's no way I could afford to do this myself. I would lose too much money in my business, existing business.
John, do
So-
you happen to recall what country the freelancer was from?
I think Sri Lanka.
Interesting.
Some of them are from India. I also hooked up when I worked for Prime Energy Solar, which is the shirt I'm wearing now. We were paying like over $400 a plan set. I managed to get that down to under $200, and I hired a team in India that was to do it for us, and I was responsible for 30 to 50 plan sets a month. And so I cut that in less than half for the solar company. And then I would train the Indians on the local codes because, you know, there's state supplements to the, you know, to the national codes. And also every state's on a different national code. One could be on the 2013 code. Another state could be on the 2018 code. And then the utility companies, they wanted, you know, wiring around their meters to be different. And so I would have to train the Indian team on how we dealt with Eversource and UI on how Eversource and UI would want things to be wired. So I guess I kind of became a solar designer, you know, and then Sean paid for like 11 certifications. So I'd go through solar training. So I guess that was
John, I don't think people know who Sean is.
Sean Roby owns Prime Energy Solar. He's a multimillionaire, very successful solar business owner. And I worked for him for probably about 4 years. I started out in sales, door-to-door sales I was doing. I worked my way up to be energy systems design director for him and director of business development within that time period. And Arctic Heat Pumps was one of the businesses I developed working for him. And he was a 50% partner, but he ended up giving me 100% of it because he didn't want to get involved in radiant heating. It was a low temperature heat pump, really works best for radiant heating. Now we have a high temperature heat pump. They can get up to like 170 degrees Fahrenheit, which is I'm really excited about. So, and another thing I want to talk about is my overall efficiency project. There's new technology out there now called conduit tech. So one of the things is you need to have somebody in the field do a heat loss calculation. Nowadays, you can get an iPad Pro, and the iPad Pro has built-in LiDAR. And with LiDAR, you just point it at the rooms, and you see how it does these cutouts. you're not measuring this with the ruler. You're just pointing it at the walls. And then it takes a picture of the walls, see? And then it is able to build this 3D blueprint of the house that looks like this down here. Can you see the 3D blueprint on your computer
Yeah.
screen?
Yeah.
You can get this 3D blueprint done within about 10 to 15 minutes. And then Conduit Take is able to do a manual J from this. Once this gets done, they're able to do a manual J from this. So now manual J, you can walk into a house, do a whole room by room heat loss, and do a manual J in like 10 to 20 minutes. You're done. So then all that information can be put into a database. And then that database, that's where you can compare. You could say, okay, the efficiency of this house is, let's say, 80%, and then this house next to it is 60%. And then you could put in like thousands of houses into the database. And then you could say, let's bring out all the houses that have foam insulation and see what their average efficiencies are. Then you could bring out all the houses that have bat insulation. And you could see that foam insulation outperforms bat insulation by about twice as much. And then from there, you could modify the manual J heat loss software to actually improve upon it, to say, you know what, because foam is always outperforming bat insulation, let's give it a higher R value in the future heat loss calculations. So that's where my formula comes into play, is my formula allows you to compare one house to another, energy efficiency wise. So you can figure out what works and doesn't work, so they can use the least amount of energy per house. And that's one of the goals, right? Is that if we can do that, then we need less of these systems. Instead of having to build one system for 2 towns, one system can be built for 4 towns. So there's less work that needs to be done if we can increase the efficiency of the houses. And it's bad. I worked for Con Ed. I was inspector of the rebate programs that they had for like 8 months. And I went to all the big buildings. I got to see how they make ice at Madison Square Garden. But anyway, I was put in charge of a project, 100 boilers for an Ivy League, for what's that? Oh, geez, why am I drawing a blank? For Columbia University, Ivy League, Columbia University. And Con Ed had them underfiring, pretty much like 80% of the boilers were underfired. So they were increasing CO2 by tuning the boilers rather than decreasing it. And I pointed that out and I showed that to them. I ended up getting laid off because I guess they're not really interested in actually reducing CO2. That doesn't seem to be important to them. The rebate programs are more important than actually the results of the rebate program. So I see there's a big problem with the educational system. It's broken. Too much is relied upon memorization. Like, they have a way of doing things. They've been doing the same way since the 50s. And they don't understand how technology works. They're being taught in a book, and that's not reality. So they were using an analyzer and the efficiency number in the analyzer. And what they failed to realize is that the analyzer does not account for the velocity or the speed of which the air moves through the combustion chamber. So the more oxygen in the flue gas, the faster it moves through the combustion chamber. The more excess air, the faster it moves through the combustion chamber. And that excess air will mix with the combustion air, dropping the stack temperature. And so the combustion analyzer is using the excess air, the oxygen content, and the stack temperature to do its calculation. But because it was not accounting for the speed at which the air moves through the combustion chamber, and it was not staying in there long enough to pass off its energy to the combustion chamber, they were increasing CO2 rather than reducing it. So
John, I got a basic question. Now, Shaw, he's a combustion expert. He knows all about combustion. I'm just a computer guy. So when I think about efficiency, I think about sort of like the energy you put in versus the energy you get out. And that's kind of like what they made me memorize when I was in school. So I guess school is kind of broken that way. Can you please explain how your energy efficiency is getting, like, I don't know, 100% or better? That just strikes me as kind of not what we were told when I was in school, sort of thing, you know?
Of how you get over 100% efficiency on a house?
Yeah, I mean, that kind of bothers me. I don't know. Does that bother anybody else? Maybe it's just because I'm a computer guy.
Well, okay, how it does it is our air source heat pump. So there's EVI, enhanced vapor injection. Enhanced vapor injection is a third heat exchanger, which cools the refrigerant even further, making it even colder. So the refrigerant goes outside and into the evaporator, and then it can, you know, it's even colder. And so it's grabbing energy from the air. And so this energy it grabs from the air is free. So the compressor is using energy to run. So there's one. So if you have a coefficient of 3, that means that the compressor is running at, one, that's one part. And then you're grabbing 2 parts energy from the air to make 3 parts of energy that you provide to the house to heat up the house. So you're able to provide more BTUs to the house. Thus, you can go 300% efficient, 400% efficient. So you can go over 100% efficiency. And another way you can go over 100% efficiency is, let's say, with foam insulation. So foam, when they measure the R value of insulation, they measure through the center point of the insulation itself. With bad insulation, they don't account for how the air moves around the insulation. It's loose within the bay, and the air will move from the back of the insulation to the front of it, and it'll get around that and negate the performance of it. Whereas when you put foam in the bay, it expands and it fills out all the cracks, and it's reducing the air infiltration rate. So you could actually get over 100% efficiency because the foam is outperforming the R values it's rated at. Okay? So is it actually more than 100% efficient? No, it's not. But it's performing better. So the R value there are based on a guess of what they think the actual R values are. And so they think the R value of the foam is maybe 10 when it's actually 20. So you can get over, and you're getting over 100% efficiency, not because the foam is actually grabbing energy from the air or anything like that. You're getting it because you're not using the right calculation for the efficiency of the air. And then the heat loss, the actual heat loss of the house is not what they say it is. So it's actually higher. So if they say, oh, the heat loss of this house is 50,000 BTUs, but because you foam it, you're outperforming it, and it's saying it's 60,000 BTUs of energy that's going into the house. You don't really have 60,000 BTUs of energy going into the house like you think you do. It's just that the foam, it doesn't need that. The actual heat loss is less than what it's stated. So that's where you'd have to adjust the heat loss calculation.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Let me come probably come a different angle for you, Doc. For instance, when John talks about coefficient performance of 3, that's
I got it. Thank you.
The equation he put is the heat loss divided by the electricity. These two, they're not part of the same pie. It's not like, cars or anything that you burn so much fuel, you get so much energy. So they're 2 unrelated items. The first one on the top is the heat coming into the room. The second one is the electricity. The electricity, all it does, it just moves the fluid around.
This is the
So
energy. This is the energy found. This is the actual energy that the house uses. This side of the equation is the actual energy that the house uses, and this is the heat loss. Of this is done by a guesstimate. So this is done by a calculation. This is not actually measured. This is actually measured. So the problem is we don't know how accurate this is. This may not be right. You could do your measurements, your manual J heat loss and stuff like that, and say the house has a heat loss of 50,000 BTUs. But it might actually be more or less than that in reality. So until we look at the database and we're comparing 10,000 houses to 10,000 houses, we will be able to actually adjust the actual heat loss up or down based on reality, so that the efficiency, so that, you know, you won't see the calculation come out over 100% efficient because they foam the whole house and it outperforms the R value that's listed. You won't see that because we will know what the actual R value of the foam is, and then we're able to say, oh, the heat loss is less. We thought it was 50,000, but because they use foam, it's actually 30,000. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's good. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And then also too, if you're grabbing energy from the air, free energy from the air, you're not paying for energy from the air. You're not paying for energy from the sun. So I look at that as free energy, and thus we get over 100% efficiency. So you're right. If you're thinking of it from an engineering term, someone could probably calculate how much energy is actually coming from the air, and you could put a number on that. But I see it as free energy because no one's going to pay for it. So I just look at it as, hey, you put 100,000 BTUs into this heat pump, and you got 300,000 BTUs of energy feeding the house. So you're 300% efficient. So that's how this efficiency number would look at it. So does that make sense? It's free energy from the air because no one has
Got
to
it.
pay from it, but there is energy coming from the air. There
Thank
is, and somebody probably, I don't know. Sorry, now I'm starting to repeat myself. Sorry for that. Oh, so if you're into combustion efficiency, have you ever looked at the combustion efficiency number that they give in the analyzers? That's very important. Maybe that's something, Shah, that you could do. Did you say that you've done some studies on combustion efficiency?
no, the doc, is just bringing up that I've worked in some combustion of work for companies, so that's what he's bringing on.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Right. So the speed at which the air is moving through the combustion chamber plays a lot in how the heat is being transferred. So that velocity needs to be part of the equation. And the analyzers currently are not using velocity in the equation. And so that's why they're given a false reading. So that's something that maybe academics could work on. Maybe they could figure out a way of including velocity in the calculation, right?
Sure.
Yes. So actually, I guess it helps that you got people like me that are visual thinkers that work with their hands and they see the systems in the field. But then there's certain things like Bob Distinti helped me with the math. Like he's a co-author on my patent. And I really didn't understand the math enough to get the formula right in my patent. And so, to get this, now I lost the formula, but anyway, you got to bring it back up again. So I could visualize this formula in my head, but because I don't have the college background, I don't have the math. I didn't take as much math as a college educated engineer would. I needed Bob DeStinti's help to come out and develop this formula to put it in this nice, neat package here. And so that's where somebody like me, the diversity of of experience and knowledge that I have can help when I work with college educated engineers and such. And so I guess it's like different types of engineers working together to produce the best positive results.
So John, let's wrap things up. Would you like to speak to the future of where you're going with this systems that you're working on?
So the future is, so the big message that I'd like to make today is that the environmentalists are looking at the global warming movement in a negative manner. They're saying we have to end fossil fuels. And so there's a lot of people that are resisting that and rebelling against that because they don't want to give up what they have. That's very hard to get humankind to agree to do that. So what I want to do is create a future to look into the future 30 to 40 years from now, where you can see a vision of energy that is abundant, that'll never ever run out, and that'll be cheaper than fossil fuels, that'll replace fossil fuels. So between hydrogen and electricity, and with nuclear and these deep well geothermal systems providing baseload power at extreme levels, huge amounts, that we can get to this world of net zero that's sustainable. And once we get there, once this electrical infrastructure is built out, it'll actually be cheaper than fossil fuels. So people will want to do it to save money. They're not going to want to do it because they're forced to do it. So the oil companies themselves will want to do it because they'll make more money drilling for geothermal than they will drilling for oil. And so that's the worldview we need to sell. If we actually want to meet net zero, if we want to meet these net zero climates, if we want to save the planet, if we want to reverse this trend, we have to sell the future, a positive future. That's what we have to sell, is the new industrial revolution of cheap, endless supply of energy. It's possible, and it can happen if we all work together.
Well, I hope everyone will join me in thanking John for a great presentation. John, thanks very much.
John, thank you.
Yeah, on the 27th of August, we're going to have Marcy Klein, an inventor from the IP Clinic. And I myself have also had an experience with the IP Clinic. The goal was to try and see if I could get free patent services from the Yukon Patent Clinic, which operates out of stores, but which works with inventors remotely. And so between the two of us, we'll have an in-person presentation, and that's going to be over at the Milford Public Library, and it's going to be in person. So if anybody,
wow,
yeah,
in person,
yeah, we don't have too many in-person meetings, and I don't know how many people will show up for that. But it's one of those things where I thought we'd give it a try, and it's a new place, Milford Public Library. I see Moses is here, and he says thanks for an interesting presentation, and I thank you. I'm gonna try and post this video within the next day or two. I'll upload it to Vimeo and put the link in place. So thanks a bunch, everybody, and I hope you have a great evening.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Doc.
all righty, have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.